watch UFC Seattle? Of course you did. For those who are coming here for the first time, making the walk, make sure that you like, share, subscribe if you hear anything that you like.
Nice.
But for those that have already been here, you know where we're going with this. We're going to talk about the card just a little bit, and then we're going to dig into some other things. But the UFC Seattle, they hadn't been there in 10 years. The way that the card shaped up initially, I mean, like it was going to be amazing, but then people started dropping off. Yeah, Dominic Cruz that was supposed to be on the card, Chidi Njokuani, Curtis Blades, Michael Chiesa, Edson Barbosa, Steve Garcia. A lot of people dropped off the card, but nonetheless, the card really delivered with a lot of finishes to start off the card. For me, the MVP of the entirety of the card was hands down John Silva. That man is one of them ones, for sure. Now, I do worry a little bit about the antics once he gets into the ring or into the octagon, but if you don't have a number next to your name, you have no business being in there with John Silva. I think that he's going to be problems as long as he can continue to make the weight for featherweight. Anthony Hernandez took care of business against Brendan Allen in what I thought should have been fight of the night, but he proved that only big fights are in his future. He is another one that could definitely be one of those ones in the middleweight division. And then, of course, the one that everybody's talking about right now, Song Yadong's fingers defeated Henry Cejudo's eyeballs. And weird fight. Didn't start off weird, but ended weird. Sure. And a lot of discourse has come out since then. Michael Bisping said that a point should be immediately taken. Jim Miller said that eye pokes are more of a choice than an accident. A lot of different opinions, but I'm curious what you have to say. One, how should eye pokes be handled? Should a point be immediately taken? And then also, what's next for Henry Cejudo? He's, 38 years old. I mean, he did not look bad in there. He didn't look washed. So what do you think should go for him? Should they make a rematch? Do we really want to see that? Dana White at the press conference said that he didn't want to make that rematch. So what's next for both of them? Leave something in the comments. Let me know what you think. But the second part of this video is a conversation that I had with John Gooden, a UFC announcer, prior to the event. And he lets us know some interesting stuff, including what they do when they have to go to the bathroom. What's good, y'all? This is interesting. I don't know if this really needs an introduction, but I have one anyway. So on my screen, I'm sure y'all see it, is a new friend of the Making the Walk family, John Gooden, and I'm sure y'all have heard his voice millions of times. But lots of things to talk about. But welcome to the show. I appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks for the invite. Good to be here. And yeah, the voice I think is more recognizable than the face, which is kind of weird. Never grew up thinking that was going to be. I'll see people and I'll start talking. Oh yeah, you're the guy.
You're that guy.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I saw that kind of made me reach out was I saw, and really congratulations are in order, that you signed a new 4-year deal, I believe it was, with the UFC. So first of all, I mean, how was that? I mean, I'm sure that that's kind of a milestone for you.
Yeah, I completed 10 years, I guess, just at the turn of the year. So this is year 11. And as much as we all like to think that we're in good favor, right? When it comes to renegotiating contracts, that's the time when I guess you can let go of someone. Let's say get rid of that dead wood or whatever it might be. And but things would have been trending in a really positive direction. People might have noticed I'm working stateside quite a bit now. So I was confident, but you never know. And it's an opportunity for both sides, right? To try and, get something out of the deal. And I'm pleased that we landed where we did. And let's see how these next ones go. But I'll be honest with you, after someone at the UFC congratulated me on the 10 years and said, I look forward to another 10, that moment there was pretty big for me. I was like, oh, I never thought about it. And believe me, I never thought I was going to get 10 years out of this, let alone plus 10 and maybe 20. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, the UFC just in general, I mean, I've actually applied to work there myself, and it's an amazing organization, and something that it's very rare as adults that we get tied to an organization that we truly believe in, that we, are a fan of and just have a pleasure working at. That's definitely something to be happy about, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, and it's the MMA world's so small. You know, I got into MMA, and I had no dreams of either fighting at the UFC or working for the UFC. Like, I just, of course, you know, that was wrong. So I probably did have a few dreams about both, but in reality, I checked myself and was like, "Well, how's that ever going to happen?" So
Yeah,
to actually grab that microphone, plus 10 years ago is still pretty surreal. And it doesn't feel like 10 either. It really
yeah.
doesn't. I still don't feel comfortable necessarily. And that's got nothing to do with the UFC. That's more just how I'm wired. But I just try and, yeah, just still trying to do the right thing every time.
It's interesting. You said something there. I'm gonna pin that. I'm gonna come back to that, but I wanted to read something to you. And it says, all this is consider my journey to this point, from attempts to become a TV presenter in my early 20s, getting released from a job in the city of London, then parking all of my ambitions of a broadcasting job to embark on an honest career as an electrician. My love of sports and particularly martial arts brought me to this point. So there's a lot that was in that statement. So that's quite a story, from City of London, electrician, broadcasting. How did this even happen?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I've just been walking through it. It's kind of happening to me. I guess. I mean, I'll try and give a shortened version of this, but my mum, my mum was half Arabic, half Irish, so she was an immigrant to the UK, and I think from the Arabic side and the Irish side actually, there was a real heavy lean on like her and her friends were almost wanting me to be a politician, like
Mm,
be a professional, go to university. No one in my family had been to university before me. I'm the eldest grandchild, so I have a little head start on everyone else. Now a bunch of
yeah.
them have. But yeah, she always used to do that. My mum was a real big communicator and really big on pronunciation and manners and all that kind of stuff. Bless her. And I think I have a lot to thank her for. And then as I was going up through school, I then ended up going to university, but stayed quite local. I really did just want to work in the city. I quite liked stockbroking. Those
Hmm.
guys seem to earn quite a lot of money, and it seemed
Yeah.
to be quite an interesting, energetic job. So that seemed to be where I was headed. And then I worked in the city of London, but it was more in like a recruitment headhunting style role. So I was around a lot of stuff, and it was still good money, but that was when I really developed my confidence because I
Mm,
stayed at home to go to university, to go to college because I was in love at the time, and the good thing is I never encountered a bunch of debt because, as I say, I was staying at home.
lucky.
But when I was in the city, things started to kind of pop off for me. I've always been a bit of a late bloomer. I'd like to think I still look a little younger than my years, and I think that's just everything about me. So things were starting to connect and calibrate in a certain way, and although I was doing well in the city, I'd seen these guys do these presenting roles on TV, and it like looked like so much fun, and I felt like I was a decent enough communicator to be entertaining and informative and whatever it might have been, and I wanted to give it a shot. And it was kind of out of nowhere. I remember my dad saying, "You're mad. You don't realize what a strong salary you're on in this job, and it sounds like the career progression's great." And I said I quit it all and started working for free at the BBC. Eventually got a job there, and even then I was earning half the money that I was when I was in the city, probably less than half actually. And things weren't working out. I gave it a go. I was being screen tested for some things, and some political stuff was happening at the BBC, and essentially it didn't work. So I was like, I gave it a go. Time to move on.
Hmm.
And so I was looking at all my options. I actually went back to the city, got fired from from the job. I went. That was crazy. And I always thought that like that on my resume was going to be a real big black mark. Do you know what I mean? And it was going to
Hmm.
hold me back, but it hasn't, thankfully. So when that didn't work out, I spoke with my dad. My dad's a long-serving electrician, had his own company, and I went back to college, retrained, and was all in on the family business, like 7 days a week. Everything I do is pretty much 2 feet first, and that's probably the work ethic that my dad's side brings.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was doing that. I was still doing that when I was calling fights for the UFC for about 18 months to 2 years. I was still doing both.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, I fell out of love with it pretty quickly. It's a hard way to earn a living, very honest way. You know, you're using these,
Yeah.
and I was what we call house bashing, so mostly sort of domestic work. So you're in and
Hmm.
out of people's homes, and yeah, it was a grind, man. It really was. I'm grateful for it, but I've always played sport, and fight sports has been something since I was 7. I did judo, then karate, then I competed amateur boxing, which is, I guess, like the Golden Glove stuff that you guys have in the
Hmm.
US. Then I went back to playing soccer just because none of my friends ever did the combat sports stuff. But it came back around, and in my late 20s, I started trying to piece together MMA. It was like Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Hmm.
Then I found an MMA club, and it's such a small sport. And I'm now training next to a guy that's, well, my coach, Dave Lee, fought in the UFC a couple of times. I
Yeah.
trained up with him just as he'd been released from the UFC. And I just realized that he's got all of these skills, this incredible athlete, but no one, when he walks down the street, no one knows who he is. No one gives him his props and his flowers. And I
Hmm.
just felt like that was wrong. And obviously getting more and more involved in the community and meeting more and more people, I felt like it was really wrong that no one's recognizing the efforts, and it's a beautiful sport, and they've got
Hmm.
it all wrong in terms of the media's thoughts of cage fighting. Everyone's an animal, like criminal elements, etc. So
Yeah.
I did all the writing in like for digital magazine shows, etc. I go and do fight reports. I've given my time to safety initiatives, called fights, done some backstage. I've done all the roles that we all try and do to like break through. And I just don't think that there were that many others that were doing it, and maybe not doing it the way that I was doing it. I'm not saying I was doing it in a good way necessarily, just different.
Hmm.
And and I guess when you're around long enough and things start to pop off, if you're in the mix, then you got a chance.
Yeah.
I was in the mix. I got given a chance, and thankfully for me, the chance landed, and here we are today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite a story. And I mean, that's perseverance, man. It's crazy, which is kind of like the moniker of this sport. We
Yeah,
really honor people who persevere and make it through, whether it's in a fight or in a career. Like that's synonymous with what you just went through. It's crazy.
yeah.
So
Consistency as well is the one thing I'd say,
yes.
because it's such a big thing. As a martial artist, I
Hmm.
am so far behind a lot of my peers because I'm just not consistent. There's many reasons for that, but I've definitely been consistent when it comes to like calling fights and doing something about my craft. And it shouldn't be a chore. It shouldn't be something that you don't enjoy doing, right? So
Right.
consistency is key, perseverance for sure. And the other thing I would just add in there is just be nice to people along the way, because you never know who you're going to encounter. And I think, again, I wouldn't say that I'm the best broadcaster. There are people that are in the UK that are better than I am, but maybe I'm just a little bit easier to work with. And that's why I got the jump on some others.
That's a big thing, man. That's one of the things that I've noticed in our sport is our accessibility to not only athletes but people like yourself, and just how nice people are. And I think that that is kind of a testament to the true nature of what martial arts is, the principles of it,
Yeah.
and you can see that within the athletes and everybody that touches it for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And at the end of the day, I'm just a martial artist and a fan of the UFC. And put those together, like, I'm not going to get above my station. I realize I've got a really fancy job title, and it affords me a lot of privileges and who I get to interact with. But deep down, I'm a martial artist and I'm a fan of MMA. And so you and I are probably super close in our nature by proxy of that.
Yeah, 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 and it definitely feels that way. So so take me back to March 8th, 2014, O2 Arena in London. We got Alexander the Mauler Gustafson
Yeah.
facing against Jimmy the Poster Boy Manawa. And there's a fresh faced John Gooden walking out there with Dan the Hangman Hardy. And like, what were the emotions going into that? I know that wasn't the first time that you had announced, done Cage Warriors and things like that. But
Yeah,
this is UFC. It's different.
exactly,
So what
exactly.
were the feelings and emotions going into that?
It's very overwhelming. It really was. As I say, I never, or as I kind of pieced out, I'm not a trained broadcaster. Uh, I was grassroots MMA, come up through small promotions. My coach's show, first of all, in this town of Watford, which is next to where I live, in a local hall. I was calling fights there by myself with a little dictaphone. And then I got a little bit bigger into Cage Warriors and did a few other shows around the UK. Cage Warriors was probably the biggest show in Europe. But in terms of the broadcast, it was nowhere near. And that's no disrespect to Cage Warriors, but it was essentially calling fights and podcasting, really. But
Hmm.
when you get to the UFC, you've got timings, you've got international audiences that are different from this audience. So you can't ever mess up those timings. You got a 13 count for that, an 8 count for that, a 10 count for that. They're different. They mean different things. You got hundreds of scripts. And that's before you've started calling the fights. So it's a real challenge, and it was a really big thing to take on. It's all a bit of a blur. The one thing that I do remember, though, apart from sailing a lot of choppy water, was when the prelims then turn to the main card,
Hmm.
and the commentators come on and they open the show on camera. As I turned round to face the camera and start getting ready, in the O2 arena, a bunch of people had gathered around that position, and the arena fades to black whilst they're playing all the sizzles. And I just saw all the camera phone, the lights on the phones, just shining our way. And I was working with Dan Hardy, and he was beloved and is beloved by
Hmm.
MMA fans across the world, but particularly in the UK. So everyone wants us to do a good job. They're bellowing all these positive messages. Go on, boys, yeah, kill it, yeah, great one. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. But I'm trying to focus on the lens that I'm looking at here with all of
Yeah.
these twinkly lights everywhere. And I just remember being really distracted and didn't expect to see a live audience.
Yeah.
When I mean live, I mean not the guys at home, the guys that are there in the building. And so that was one thing that really stuck out to me. Otherwise, it was a big learning process for everyone. And I just remember kind of getting through it. And I remember Gustafsson's fans being very loud as well, because I was
Yeah.
expecting it was Jimmy Manuel's house, but Gus was he was a big star.
Yeah. Gus was everything. He really was. Um, but that's very interesting. And well, obviously you don't know this, but I before venturing into this, I was a performer. So I did music and I performed for a lot of different crowds and different sizes. Far easier, in my opinion, to perform in front of people because I can gauge emotion, feel energy.
Right.
But when you're performing for a camera, there's nothing, you're getting nothing back. You don't know how the person on the other side of it feels. So doing it simultaneously and really trying to play to the camera, I know that's got to be weird and difficult, especially the
Yeah,
first time.
it was weird the first time. Yeah, the whole thing was weird. And then it just goes at what you were just saying there about audiences and live. We've been through Fight Island, right, where you're almost having to you're not fabricating an atmosphere, because the atmosphere is what it is, but you still got to get excited. You still
Hmm.
got to come with an energy. But
Yeah.
if I was to pull my cans away, I could hear my voice echoing around
Oh,
that building, that tent, because there's no one around. It's so that's why we were having these issues with fighters almost getting a third and fourth corner person, because us commentators would say something and then they could hear it because there was nothing in between.
yeah.
It's no other noise. So yeah, it is interesting, and the
Yeah.
UFC's given me opportunities to do some live hosting. Um, on weigh-in day, and I've also done a couple of others. I did a purple carpet thing for Metro PCS back in the day when Connor won his double champ status. So yeah, I've been blessed for these different opportunities. So I've had a little taste of your world, if you will, with the live crowd and giving you something back. And yeah, they're special moments. They really are. Smiling faces. Not too many boos yet for me. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, you probably won't get those, but those are.
Oh, I get them. Believe me, I get them. I'm just not sure if they're always going to be right, front row there jeering at me. But
So speaking of opportunities, one of the things that I've seen is at least recently the up close thing that you did for Oban Elliott.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Thanks for checking it out.
yeah, it was really good. And just the documentary and style, the conversational. Oban is a very emotional guy,
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that going into that. Obviously, you only see one side of them, and I love when an extra side of the athlete is exposed. Even somebody like Nina Drama, the way that she exposes a different
Yep.
side of the
I
athlete
agree.
is
Yeah.
always good to see. But how have you kind of embraced those new opportunities like that with the UFC? And I'm sure that there's going to be more that's factored into the contract that you just signed.
Yeah, well, that was a different contract, but yeah, that one's with UFC Fight Pass,
Hmm.
and I always knew that that style would work because I know that I would love to, much like you. It's important to see the other sides of the athlete, or I should say, it's important for me to tell those stories, but it's
Hmm.
enjoyable as a fan to learn about them, and otherwise, for me, it's just X and Y fighting in a cage, which I'm all right with because I love the sport and I love the technical detail. But isn't it nice when you find out that someone's either a little bit like you or nothing like you, or you respect something, or even I don't like Colby Covington. Like I've actually met Colby, and I know what I think I know what he's like away from the persona, but at the same time, I really respect, in a way, I don't agree with what he says, but the person that he is on camera, like some of the lines he comes up with, he's a really good orator. His delivery is really good, so I can really respect a lot of these elements. So yes, it's great that we've got different platforms to leverage. Now, I can't do the kind of Colby thing. What I feel like I can do is just get on with people and be a conduit. And I also understand from being on the mats for many years now and trying and failing to be a good fighter. I think that gives me like a pretty good sense of what these men and women go through. So I actually, my very first up close documentary was with Darren Till, and it was a guy from the gym. We went up to Liverpool with a camera. He was a film student. It was really rudimentary equipment. We mostly drove around in my car, but we also did some stuff at the gym as well, watching Darren train. And yeah, it was people like telling their own story. I think some people do, but through the years of developing my interview technique, I'd like to think I have some skills in helping like leverage and crowbar stories out of people in a
Hmm.
kind way. If you don't want to take it, then that's all good. But if you'll allow me, I'll take you on a little journey so that we can all discover something. So I've done that with a few people. I did it with Darren, and that's what really launched this series because it got buy-in from Fight Pass. I then went and my next one with Hamzat Chimaev that went viral. It was a really big performer for Fight Pass as well. I've done a couple of others. I did Jack Shaw, Arnold Allen, Lerone Murphy, and Nathaniel Wood. They're all at different levels of kind of production quality. But the latest one with Oban, I threw a lot of money at that. So I had two cameramen come down, really good, experienced cameramen as well. Stayed there for the whole day, the travel either side. So yeah, made some good effort. Oh, and the edit, I've got to say, yeah, Peter,
Yeah.
my editor, I've paid a lot of money for the edit as well. So and he did a fantastic job with that. So I've got another one coming up. We're working on it at the moment. I went to the Fighting Nerds in Brazil in January, and I actually spent 4 days with them. So
Yeah.
I did like one training session there, but hung out with Jean Silva, who's fighting this weekend actually, Bruno Brazil, Caio Bahalio, um, Carlos Prates, and a few other the guys that are coming through at the moment. So I had a wonderful, almost life changing experience in Brazil, and I'm just trying to get all of that edited together. So there's plenty more to come. I really enjoy those projects for sure, and I'm glad that they're getting noticed.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very excited to see that one. That one's gonna do numbers. I can guarantee that for
Yeah.
sure. Because
Oh
the
yeah,
fighting nerds are hot right now. Even though
they
Bruna
are.
Brazil didn't win her last one, I mean it doesn't they're still hot. they're still hot right now for sure.
Yeah, I think well the two ladies, so Shatara, sadly she didn't get it done, and
Yeah.
then Bruna didn't get it done. But if Jean Silva can kind of keep the guys going, they no male athlete from there has lost in over a year. So it's still a
Mhm.
whatever. They had an incredible 2024, and they do
Yeah.
things differently, mate. They really do. The way that I've been down there and observed it, I'm lucky. I do a lot of producing work for the UFC. I go to a lot of different teams, and Pablo's doing things differently over there, and I really like it. We've seen the results.
Yeah, definitely shout out to your editor for the Oban Elliott. As an editor myself, like it is amazing what he did and the different shots that they got. There was a scene where Oban is talking about um, his dad looking at him through the window,
Yeah,
and he was sitting out there and he has a scar on his face from
yeah,
the fence or whatnot. The way that they got the shot from down the alleyway, from around the
yeah,
corner, as if they were
yeah,
eavesdropping on the
yeah,
conversation, and then
yeah,
came in. Yeah, that was amazing. It was really good
yeah.
work.
Yeah, we that it's so interesting. You clearly know your stuff because that was a particular scene that we've spoken about in what we're trying to achieve going forward. Because yeah, we just had the mics live and we're just continuing that conversation. But yeah, we need more of those shots to make
Hmm.
make it look pretty. As much as I think that you can do these, and I have done these documentaries a bit more quick and dirty where it isn't painted beautifully with nice b-roll, but it does make it a nicer view, like viewing experience if you can make it like a documentary film. So money, as long as the money doesn't run out, I'll always try and hit those notes as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was beautifully done. One of the things in my research that I didn't know about you was, or maybe I don't know if you still are, but are you vegan?
I'm not.
Veganish?
It's funny, yeah. So I was always nervous about kind of bringing this up because people are going to say that people that know me are going to spit their drink out at what I'm about to say. But I don't think I was really one of those people that was out there going crazy, like, look at me, I'm a vegan. But I would definitely engage someone in a conversation because it would just come up. You're sitting there, you're eating different things, and you can order something anyway. So it would always be something that I'd have a conversation about. And it's not like I've completely abandoned all of my principles, but I had some blood work done and I just wasn't as healthy. And I was constantly injured. And with the travel, and I have a daughter now as well. So I was vegan for 8 years. It's been 2 years since I've started having an omnivorous diet again. But it's very difficult to kind of take the plant based principles and bring my daughter up with that because I'm okay experimenting with myself, but I'm obsessed with brain development and maintaining cognitive function for obvious reasons. Work
Hmm.
in a sport where it's a hot topic in terms of impact, but also I'm working and I need to be sharp. So I'm always trying to do good things around that. And I was just looking at my daughter, going, God, if she doesn't get her omegas and like some of these essential oils, what about her development in this way? And she was doing fine,
Hmm.
but then we always were saying she should have fish, and then I went from just having a piece of fish, and then essentially being otherwise plant based to now, yeah, eating everything pretty much. But I've only had red meat about half a dozen times in a couple of years, so I still like tonight. I'm going to make a plant based like chili.
Hmm.
My daughter loves that. I still don't have dairy, but it doesn't agree with me. There were just a few things, but no, these days I can tackle all of the roads in soup.
It's interesting that I mean, like what I've seen from people that I've met that are vegan, it's almost like religion. Um, it's what it feels like, and it's like if you know,
Yeah,
go against these principles, like you know, you know how religion is. So,
yeah, yeah, and that was why. I mean, I did. I ended up getting quite a few friends in that community because you just share stuff, and then they have meetups. So yeah, and I don't have meetups for my normal friends. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
there was a community there, and I think there are personality types as well. And I think I must touch on that kind of alternative personality type where you're always going against the grain a little bit,
Hmm.
but I'm not all the way there because it is hard to live like that. It's hard to live against the grain in everything we do. Sometimes I think we do need to push back. Like we got a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, don't we? And I think when we feel passionate about some things, we should probably be putting our hands up more than what we all are. But yeah, I think there is something in our personality types. Even MMA, it's an alternative sport. I'm not just
Yep.
content with watching my football or soccer every weekend. I want this is something that I love. But yeah, it did. Every now and then, I'd hear some of the things that they would say and some of the things that people would do, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm not sure that that's the right way forward." But I just wanted to do me. It was working for what I needed at the time. Then it didn't. Then it wasn't working any longer. So I've had to change.
Yeah. So last question on the vegan thing, and this was kind of brought up by Drickus Duplessis and Nina Drama. They were having a conversation about veganism, and I believe that she is either
Yeah,
vegan or vegetarian, and he was saying that he doesn't think that anybody could be truly successful in the UFC and be vegan because he didn't think that they would be able to get everything that they needed and not take any sort of supplements. Like,
right.
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, well, in terms of supplements, I think anyone with any diet is supplementing. I think that's a lot to do with our food sources. And as athletes, they're always trying to top up everything so that you don't get sick. Creatines and zincs, magnesiums. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there that most athletes in the UFC would be taking. Now, the Diaz brothers, the jury's out on whether they were full vegan, but they were I think they went full vegan during fight camps, and they did pretty well. Jake Shields, he was at least vegetarian. James Wilkes, who actually brought out and produced the Game Changers documentary on Netflix, which had a
Mhm.
really big impact actually on that vegan community. He is still plant based. There were a few others as well. I think Abel Trujillo was plant based for a little while. There are a few female athletes that were. So when you consider the like MMA as a whole, these are athletes that, and I've just reeled off the ones that were on the tip of my tongue. They got to the top. They got to the UFC. You can still perform. Not everyone's going to be a champion anyway, so it's hard to kind of
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of
they're
hard
a
to gauge.
0.01%. Yeah, they're a 0.01%, right?
Yeah.
What are the chances they're going to have a diet that only, what is it, 4% of the population adhere to? So yeah, we'll wait and see. But I actually think that as a fuel, as a source of fuel, you know, I think you'll be okay. It's just whether I'm not sure if you'll get anyone that was born and bred vegan that would end up, becoming a UFC champion. But they certainly in across different sports for sure, there are vegetarians and vegans that are achieving like the highest of the high.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So pivoting back to kind of your 9 to 5, I guess. Well, you're 5 to 9, 5 to 12. But so what fighter, and you've seen tons of fighters, make that walk. What fighter makes your heart race when they're walking to the cage? Because I know for me, there's certain fighters like back in the day, Anderson Silva, when he's coming out, I'm my heart is racing as if I'm walking out with him.
Yeah.
But are there fighters, or is there a fighter that kind of does that for you?
Well, you picked one there. Like Anderson Silva for me was the guy. He really was. I used to remember just watching him hit the bag. Just be like, oh my god! And I would try and hit the bag in a similar way, and it just didn't get close.
Yeah,
Um,
he's amazing.
oh, it was unbelievable. And then to be on the call for him versus Michael Bisping, and Bisping was the guy from the UK, like the most successful guy. That was a moment for me. And
Yeah,
now I get to work with Mike as well, which is a pinch me moment.
yeah,
Um, guys that uh I mean there's so many, it's hard to have favorites. I will say this is a big plug, but I've got a teammate who's in the UFC, Sam Patterson,
oh
and
yeah.
I
Hmm.
was there at the Dana White's Contender Series fight that he had. Oh boy, I felt very invested in that. I really did, and I like emotionally invested and nervous. Yeah, that was a big pressure cooker. And I was there when he got knocked out in his debut. I was there in London for that show as well, and they actually brought me out, and I was watching that, and I was in kind of all. I'm getting soft in my old age, you see. So I was, yeah, that was something. But yeah, you know what? I can have a really positive interaction with a fighter during fight week, and it will just give, and I'll just be a little more connected and have a little bit more anticipation about their performance. I think like Jose Delgado was that guy on the week just gone.
Hmm.
Just a bright kid. Do you know what I mean? And his story is a powerful one, and I thought he had an incredible skill set. So there's anticipation there. But of your big guys, like Adesanya always puts on a show. I'm going to tune in for that. Bobby Knuckles always gets me fired up.
Hmm.
I think that McGregor, there was something about he was very animalistic. It's McGregor when he's walking out, it's like he can pick out a single person in a crowd. He's just so aware.
Yeah.
So McGregor walkouts were always, huge and quite emotive as well. Yeah, so many for different reasons, but yeah, you picked a couple of good ones that I share.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting. So you spoke on something there when you brought up Sam Patterson, and I feel this. The more that I'm doing this particular work, and the more people, specifically athletes that I get to speak with, I get emotionally invested in watching them fight. One of them now, a good friend of mine, Max Griffin, when he went and
Right.
fought Michael Chiesa, like I was emotionally invested in that fight. And how do you? I mean, I know they have the fighter meetings and things like that. How do you keep that separate? How do you draw that line when you're making the call?
Well, the best man or woman must win. That's what it always comes down to, right? Um, I've got no, I'm just calling it. Like, I've got no say in who wins or loses. It's not like I'm judging or have any kind of impact in that way. But people get angry, when you're favouring one over another. And I look, by the way, I will always try my best that never comes through. While I'm on this, it's just you got 15 or 25 minutes, right? But you don't know when that fight's going to end. And I'll be filling up the bucket in the blue corner as we get into the fight. And before I know it, the red corner goes and gets a knockout or doesn't or gets knocked out. And you've not even spoken about the red corner yet. But
Yeah.
that's because you were aware you wanted to finish your point, and now you're going to go over to the other side and start topping up that bucket, and then you've got a bit of balance. But then a fight's a fight. I mean, I've had it before. I'm halfway through a story and someone puts a shin on someone's face. You're like, oh, now
Yeah.
I seem like a wally, and because I was in the middle of a story here when I've not called the action. So they're just little things that are a bit of an annoyance. But otherwise, yeah, I will say this. With the UFC, there's so much going on that you have to be very present, very dialed in, which probably makes it easier to take out some of the emotion.
Hmm.
Um, I'll let you into something here. At the end of Saudi, so when Imavov and Adesanya were in the cage, I was so dialed in and wanted to hear what both men were saying. I got instructed the traffic to get like the next few items to get us off of air, but I messed it up because I was listening too much to what the guys in the Octagon were saying. By the
Hmm.
time they started firing the various videotapes and features and whatever else, I completely got it wrong. We were going to break, and I started talking on something else. But it was because I got too emotionally invested in what was going on. I was pretty fatigued at that point, which is probably why. But that's an example of actually the job keeps you on the money
Yeah.
largely because there's just someone talking to you in your ear, and you know that something's coming next, so you've got to try and focus in. So yeah, but it's difficult. We're all human. We do have our favorites, and that's just how it is. It's a small world. It really is a small world.
Hmm. I feel like people give, the Paul Felders, DC, Bisping. I think they give them too much grief when they're trying to, call these fights impartially, but they know these people, they've trained with these
Yeah.
people, and it's hard to not filter in some personal anecdotes and things like that. From I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it. If somebody from AKA is in there and DC knows them, like he's going to
Yeah.
give some extra stuff.
And that's going to be beautiful for us.
Yeah.
It is really difficult because we're an international organization, and there are, as much as we try our best. I mean, it would be unfair for me to like give the examples, but I've tried to get some stuff from a fighter. I'm like, help us understand you better. Like, what don't the fans know about you? Tell me
Hmm.
something about. They go, you want to know some of my personal life? I just don't want to share. Oh, okay, and I respect that. But now the person that they're fighting against has just given us an A-class interview with loads of information, completely divulged their strategy. So then what do you do? Do you know what I mean? In
Yeah.
the broadcast, I'm guessing all I'm talking about is real low hanging fruit with this one fighter. Then the other one has given me so much. I can tell you something really profound. So it's a bit of a dance, and we have to still have to try and balance it out. But yeah, we're there to try and help entertain and tell people the story if they're comfortable with it. And yeah, I think it's. I would encourage fighters to do it because you're inspiring people.
Yeah.
Essentially. That's what it's down to.
100%. So I have two more questions. One of them is very important. So the first one is, what moment, and you've had a lot of moments that you've seen, what moment made you appreciate that you were the voice of that moment?
Oh, I don't. I honestly don't know if I've ever looked at it like that. I really don't. It's every now and then when I hear my voice come over on what we call the combo feature. So it's the sizzle before the fighters walk out. If
Hmm.
we're in an arena, I'll sometimes just hear my voice echoing around, and I'll be like, "That's me."
Yeah, it's
And
got to be crazy.
we're at these ceremonial weigh-ins, and I don't announce the weigh-ins, but I often do the voiceover to then call out Michael or Paul or Dan back in the day, and I'll be sitting there with all the fans around me, and it's a bit awkward because I'm listening to my own voice, and I'm just like, I'm all part of this. Like that's mad. I want. There was another moment actually because I always still have there's elements of imposter syndrome about me, and there was a countdown show, and I'm sure it was there was a Tom Aspinall fight, maybe it was Pavlovich, it must have been something like that. But I'd called a lot of Tom Aspinall's fights, and I'd also been on a call for Pavlovich and some of the other people that he'd fought. So my storytelling and some of my commentary was on that countdown. And I remember actually copying and pasting the YouTube, and I put a note in my little journal diary thing saying, "Next time you're feeling shit about yourself, click this." Sadly, they've taken the video down. Like it's gone. Like once the countdown's done, they've like put it to private or something, so it's not there anymore. Um,
Uh,
but I think I might have sent. I think I sent it to my dad because my dad's not really into this stuff. But I think I sent that to him because it. I think that some of the lines in there were actually pretty decent. You know, I was trying to tell the story, and yeah, it had some of Tom's injury stuff in there, and also I've mad respect for Tom. So and Pavlovich and all the guys. But Tom, I've gotten to meet now his dad. So that was just a really nice thing to hear when my words had worked for the storytelling.
yeah. No, that's definitely a moment. So last question, and I'll tell you where this came from before I ask the question. So um, we do a lot of watch alongs and things like that, and we've done them where we've done the main card, and we've done them where we've done the entirety of the show.
Right.
So therefore, we're on camera for all that time as well.
Yeah.
And my wife, she's done them with me. She's a big part of this channel, and what's interesting about it is we're on camera and people are interacting with us and things of that nature. And it's like, man, when am I going to get up? I got to find a time to get up. When is that going to be? And so it made her think, So when do the announcers go to the bathroom?
Yeah,
I was like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know when they go to the bathroom.
yeah,
So when do y'all go to the bathroom? How do you time that to
yeah.
make sure that
This
you
is this is funny. So I've got a really small bladder. So would you believe it? I probably go to the bathroom 2 or 3 times a show, maybe more, but I'd say I went 3 times on this last show at the Apex, and the toilet, the bathroom for the Apex is a long way from that commentary position, and you got to like do these like twists and turns, and when you're in
oh
like dress
no.
shoes, I'm kind of it's like a comedy sketch. One day I know I'm just going to lose my footing, and someone's going to be like 5 minutes later, where the hell is Gooden? And I'm going to be like heads hit the concrete, and I'm like blacked out somewhere. So I will be on to my producers and kind of say, "Yeah, sorry, fellas, it's that time. I could really do with the toilet break." And they're like, "Oh my god, okay. Well, we've got a feature coming up which runs 2.5 minutes, followed by X, or Megan's taking the first out. She's taking the walk straight out. So once you do your combo, then you can go." So we literally have to plan it where I will go. Now the color analysts, they can pretty much go any walkout, but it's funny that the guys aren't really they're not used to doing like starting off the walkouts themselves. So
Mhm.
they're very good at taking the ball. So John, Brendan, and I will set the table, and then we'll give them hopefully a nice, easy, comfortable lead that they can pick up and run with. But when they got to start it themselves, because they've not thought of it in that way, you can see them like, oh right, shit. How do I start? Well, okay, here comes such and such, and all right, there's 3-fight win streak, and then they find their rhythm.
Yeah.
I'm always listening, so I don't want to repeat everything that they've just said. So while I'm peeing, I'm still listening to the show, going, let's get this over with so I can get back. And it's so funny, yeah. But I've joked in the past. I don't know if you had the bleep test in the States where you'd run between 2 points and match the
Mhm.
bleep, right? So I say to people, like, part of my training for fight night is doing the bleep test. I've got to get to and from the bathroom as quickly as possible.
Now see, I know you have a YouTube channel. That is what we need on the YouTube channel. Your journey from the seat to the bathroom. That's what we need.
Yeah, I'm going to put a GoPro on. Yeah, just see
That's
the
what we need.
journey.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, some of these venues that we go to, the nearest bathroom is the bathroom that all the fans are in.
Oh
I've
no.
definitely, I've definitely had some strange looks when I've dived in there, and because of course I'm wearing a bow tie and stuff and a suit. People are like, "Aren't you supposed to be like calling the fights?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am. Don't judge me if I don't wash my hands." Uh, so yeah, it's they're quite funny moments.
That's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, I've taken a lot of your time. So I mean
I've enjoyed this though. It's been good.
I really appreciate you jumping on with me. Hopefully we can do it again in the future and you know,
Absolutely.
definitely stay in touch, and if you need anything for your YouTube channel, things of that nature, we're connected. So but is there anything that you want people to know? As far as you, the man, and the things that you have going forward.
Yeah, well, with the YouTube channel, thank you for bringing that up. I've released part one of my vlog for Vegas, so I'm starting to do a few more behind the scenes. I think people enjoy that. Want to see what we're going. Some of it's boring, but some people that are really into maybe the broadcasting elements will quite enjoy, I think, some stuff. I try and throw a few tips in there, or whatever it might be, from travel tips to the commentary stuff itself. So I've done part one. Part two I'll probably put out later or tomorrow. But yeah, I've got a YouTube channel, John Gooden UK, and we just talk MMA and broadcasting stuff. So yeah, check it out.
Yep, I've checked it out, and I'm subscribed, and I enjoy it myself. So, um, you guys, if y'all haven't done so, you definitely should. But also, while you're doing that, make sure you subscribe to me. That's
There you go.
extremely important. You want to do
It
that.
is. Yeah.
But again, I appreciate you, man. And we'll talk again soon.
Yeah. I look forward to it. Thanks for having me on.